It's your girl, the messenger with a smile, and I've made some posts about Easter and traditions and all of that stuff. And ironically, we're continuing to read the book of Deuteronomy on my YouTube channel. And then chapter 16, which is one that's due up for now, is talking about Passover. So let's learn what actually pleases the Most High during this season, because Easter and Resurrection Sunday ain't it. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1. Observe the month of Abib and keep the Passover to the Lord your God. For in the month of Abib, the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt by might. You shall offer the Passover sacrifice to the Lord your God from the flock or the herd of the place where the Lord your God would choose to make his name and his presence dwell. That was Jesus, okay? Yeshua. Verse 3. You shall eat no leavened bread with it. For 7 days you shall eat with unleavened bread, the bread of affliction, for you fled from the land of Egypt in haste, that all the days of your life you may earnestly remember the day when you came out of Egypt. So right now, everybody in my house and people who know this are not eating leavened bread, buns, regular bread, all that type of stuff. Nobody's eating leavened bread. We're eating unleavened bread right now, all the way until Sunday. Okay, verse 4. No leaven shall be seen with you in all your territory for 7 days, nor shall any of the flesh which you sacrifice the first day at evening be left all night until the morning. You may not offer the Passover sacrifice within any of your towns which the Lord your God gives you, but at the place which the Lord your God will choose in which to make his name and his presence dwell. There you shall offer the Passover sacrifice in the evening at sunset at the season you came out of Egypt. And, which is now, this is the season when we came out of Egypt. This is it right now. Verse 7, and you shall roast and eat it in the place which the Lord your God will choose. And in the morning you shall turn and go to your tents. For 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread. Hebrews, we repeat ourselves. Because a lot of times we don't get it the first time. You get stuff by repetition. So verse 8 again. For 6 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a solemn assembly to the Lord your God, and you shall do no work on it. You shall count 7 weeks, begin to number the 7 weeks from the time you began to put the sickle to standing grain, which is now. So that's when we count the Omer. That's the 7 weeks. Then you shall keep the Feast of Weeks to the Lord your God. And counting the Omer is reading the book of Psalms, chapter 119. And if certain Bibles have it where every word in the alphabet of Hebrew is at the beginning of like every 8 chapters. So you can see what exactly the parts you're supposed to show. I'll put a picture up so y'all can see what it is. So verse 10, back to verse 10. Then you shall keep the Feast of Weeks. The Feast of Weeks, not a holiday, not, you know what I'm saying, whatever people pagan is feasts. They are feasts specifically that he's called us to keep. Feast of Weeks to the Lord your God with the tribute of a freewill offering. Now people do that a lot, but we ain't gonna get on that a whole bunch. A freewill offering from your hand, which you shall give to the Lord your God, as the Lord your God blesses you. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your son and your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, and the Levite who is within your towns, the stranger or temporary resident, the fatherless, the widow who are among you, at the place in which the Lord your God chooses to make his name and his presence dwell. And you shall earnestly remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and you shall be watchful to obey these statutes. You shall observe the Feast of Tabernacles, or booths, for 7 days after you have gathered in from your threshing floor, and wine vat. Verse 14, you shall rejoice in your feasts, you, your son, your daughter, your manservant, your maidservant, the Levite, the transient and the stranger, the fatherless and the widow who are within your towns. Rejoice. People talking about the feasts are boring and all of that jazz. No, rejoice. It's fun. Verse 15, for 7 days you shall keep a solemn feast to the Lord your God in the place which the Lord your Lord chooses, because the Lord your God will bless you in all your produce and in all the works of your hands, so that you will be altogether joyful. 3 times a year shall all your males appear before the Lord your God in the place. So he just actually went over 3 different feasts. You got Passover, you got Feast of Weeks, and then you got the Feast of Tabernacles or Booths. So verse 16 is full of meat, as they will say. So verse 16 again, 3 times a year shall all your males appear before the Lord your God in the place which he chooses, at the Feast of Unleavened Bread, at the Feast of Weeks, and at the Feast of Tabernacles or Booths. They shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Every man shall give as he is able, not trying to stress people out. It's only as you're able to give is what you give. Verse 17, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you. You shall appoint judges and officers in all your towns, which the Lord your God gives you, according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. Not this stuff that we see in the day that we living in. Verse 19, you shall not misinterpret nor misapply judgment. You shall not be partial or take a bribe. For a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the words of the righteous. Verse 20, follow what is altogether just, uncompromisingly righteous, that you may live and inherit the land which the Lord your God gives you. You shall not plant for yourselves any kind of tree dedicated to the goddess Asherah besides the altar of the Lord your God, which you shall make. Neither shall you set up an idolatrous stone or image, which the Lord your God hates. That's the best way to end it. It's like, why do we do this? Why do I read this? Why is this important? Because if you believe in the Lord, there's certain ways you're supposed to behave, and there are certain things you're not supposed to do, because he hates certain things and he loves certain things. And that's just the way it is. I ain't nothing but a messenger. I ain't nothing but a messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. And I try to do it with a smile so that y'all don't get so upset. But it's truth. I love y'all. Have a great one.